Even the care of the eggs, larvae, and pupa is taken over by the workers, who now form a large, strong body. Now the queen changes for a second time. Indeed, she does not regain the marks of her youth, as she remains wingless, toothless, hairless, and covered with scars, but with nourishment. She recovers fully and becomes fat. Her ovaries, now the most important part of her body, develop amazingly. She can lay eggs in series after series to build up a greater, more powerful people. While this method of founding a state is common among the ant people, it is by no means the only one. The stronger and more vitally alive the young mother is, the greater the possibility for her to live through starvation and rear her brood. In some species, however, the fructified female cannot do this alone. She has to look about for help. How she does this will be told later. The estimates of the number of citizens in an ant state vary greatly. Some species, like the narrow-breasted, whose females lay only a few eggs, have only a few dozen citizens. In contrast, in other species, the number has been estimated as high as hundreds of thousands, with allied colonies running into the millions. No matter how large a people may be, it must finally come to an end, and its death seems to be directly connected with the death of the queen, even though she attains the unusual age. For an insect of 15 years, she must die at last. Some states, it is true, have vice queens, in a very populous state, and as many as 50, usually daughters of the race mother, who assist her in increasing the number of the people. There seems to be no basic reason why a people of this kind should die out all at once upon the death of the race mother. It would be possible, of course, for the workers to place their state in the control of the younger, fertilized females when the old queen dies, and in this way ensure the perpetual existence of their people. But as a matter of fact, this is seldom done. In some unexplained way, at least one which we humans cannot grasp, the life of the original founder of the ant state is directly bound up with the life of her people. When the queen dies, all the citizens are seized with a similar disinclination to live. We humans might call it mourning to the point of disgust with life. There are common customs among men in New Guinea and some of the South Sea Islands, where whole races commit a species of suicide after the death of a beloved prince. The individuals do not slay one another or themselves, but they prevent their wives from bearing children, and thus allow the tribe to die out. I saw a dying race of this kind on the island of Buka, and I witnessed a similar disgust with life and the slow dying out of a race of ants, whose soul, their queen, had been taken away. In the Haitians' voodoo cult, the priestess bears the name Mamaloi. The word means Mama Roy, Mother Queen, but in the degenerate French of the Haitian Negroes, the R has been changed to an L. It is a great, beautiful word, one which we can hardly translate into the mourning for the dark serpent priestess. We have to search far and wide among men to find a Mamaloi, mother and queen, but we find them in every ant hill. There, in a very literal sense, the female is both mother and queen of her people, and who can question that she is their priestess as well? In her, all for which the ants live and die is made concrete. She heads the simplest form of the strong national labor state. The bee queen is born the queen, but this is not true of the ant queen. The rights of the latter to queenship must be demonstrated through a strenuous struggle for existence. She must prove herself a conqueror. Many a female ant strives for the great prize, but very few attain it. Every female ant permits herself to be fertilized, not only by one but by 3 or 4 males, one after the other. If humanly speaking, we grant the love choice to the queen bee, who selects only one, and that is the best and strongest lover, we shall have to deny the ant queen any right to choose a lover. This, however, is greatly to the advantage of the race. She yields only in exceptional cases to her brothers, usually to males of other peoples, generally of the same species. Their children are the children of one mother, but of different fathers, so inbreeding is prevented. After the wedding, The ant queen behaves very differently from the bee queen. She is not a mere egg-laying machine. She draws her people closely to herself. She lays eggs and cares for them, as well as for the larvae and pupae, and does this all alone, starving herself to serve. Only after she has reared a group of workers to help her does she give over all the work to the young workers, reserving only the office of egg-laying. If you destroy an ant nest, you will see how, if the necessity arises, the queen herself takes hold to save larvae and eggs and rebuild their nest. The ant queen, in a far higher sense than the bee queen, is in reality the mother and queen of her people. The marked characteristics of ants appear even in the first moments of being. The young queens, all alone, ready to find new people, must act as their own midwives, picking up in their mouths the eggs they have just laid. Later, the workers assist their queen when she is laying, stroking her, licking her, taking care of her fresh-laid eggs, yes, even helping to draw them from her body. When the mother has been fructified, she keeps the male germ in a little pocket throughout her life. As the egg passes from the ovary, it may or may not be fertilized by this germ. As a rule, the progeny of the unfertilized eggs are male. Of fertilized eggs, will be female or workers. The first dozen born of the young queen are usually rather small, relatively weak creatures, but from the earliest moment, the brood is nursed carefully. The care of progeny is developed more highly among the ants than among other animals. Not only do they feed their young, they keep them clean and transport them from one place to another, if they deem warmth or moisture good for them. Some of the ants even take their young out during warm nights and carry them around for an airing, just as human nurses and governesses take the children to the parks. Within the nest, the eggs, larvae, and pupae are kept separately in the places best adapted for their stage of growth. Medium-sized and larger larvae in very damp rooms, eggs in dry rooms, and pupae in very dry chambers. As the heat and moisture do not remain constant, the ant nurses patiently carry their charges around, bringing them nearer to the surface during the warmer hours of the day, and taking them deeper into the nest during the cold hours of the night. Sometimes we find them sitting on the eggs to keep them warm. The ants treat their young very much as men do their children. To make the parallel complete, only nursing at the breast seems lacking, and even this may be found among the ants that live in the Sunda Islands and the Philippines. These ants have highly developed breasts, which would be admired by every mother or wet nurse. They are insects, not mammals, yet they suckle their young. Like human females, they have 2 openings on the breast, making it possible to speak of 2 breasts. These ants are very fond of anything sweet, especially of honeydew. Their cattle are the leaf lice and lightning bugs, which they milk, and the milk from their breasts is a sweet honeydew milk. The observer can easily see this golden liquid through the transparent skin of the ant's breast, as it shines through against the darker background of the ant itself. Unlike the nursing human mother and the females of all other mammals, the nursing workers of these ants are all maids. They offer their breasts not only to the young brood but also to their grown sisters and of course to the queen. Their sweet milk belongs to all their people. These nurse ants are called chromatogaster, meaning expanded hanging stomach. It might have been more correct to term them hanging breasts, but even this is not precisely true, as the hanging part is below the breast proper. It is true that all ants know that young ants taste good. They are very fond of these tidbits. The captured brood of a strange people is devoured with delight, but each ant's own brood is usually sacred, though at times an egg just laid is eagerly devoured, or the larvae are fed with some of the eggs. This is quite cannibalistic, but it is a characteristic that is found all over the animal world. Some birds devour their own eggs, and some mammals devour their newborn progeny, especially in captivity. Even to mankind, this custom was by no means strange. In grey antiquity, the gods were supposed to slaughter children year in and year out and eat them up to boot. The entire relationship of the greatest of the Greek gods rested upon children who were devoured. Hera, Demeter, Hestia, Pluto, and Poseidon were all eaten up by their father Kronos, and it was only because of their divine immortality that they were spewed forth alive. A myth, of course, but neither song nor myth ever took form which did not rest upon some actual deed of man. The eggs are carefully licked, and this spittle may be absorbed by the eggs, which would explain the growth that is observed so frequently. It is certain that the spittle prevents filth and protects them from mold. It also attaches the very small eggs together and makes it easy to carry them back and forth. The larva emerges from the egg without eyes or legs, but with a well-developed mouth. It manifests a remarkable appetite, and the more it is fed, the more rapid its growth. Some ants give the larvae nothing but liquid food, while others feed them whatever they eat. Meat-eating ants administer meat as a matter of course, feeding the larvae with small insects or pieces of them, while the vegetarian ants give their larvae vegetables, and those using a mixed diet feed the same to their larvae. Some species of ants have naked larvae, but most of them are more or less hairy. This hairiness serves various purposes. It protects the larvae from the bare earth and prevents them from being gobbled up by some hungry neighbor. The hairy covering also helps in gathering the larvae together for transport when the workers wish to take them elsewhere, hurriedly in the face of threatening danger. When the larva is fully grown, it begins to enter upon the pupae stage. The larvae of some species weave cocoons about themselves, while others do not. Even in the same species, we find some spinners and some non-spinners, so that in the same nest we find some pupae naked and others in cocoons. The workers help the spinners by covering them with sand, burying them in the earth, or covering them with bits of wood, which the larvae later use to fasten their silk. The larvae move their heads backward and forward and surround themselves with fine silk. When they have finished the cocoons, the workers dig them out and remove every grain of dirt from the silk. These encased pupae are popularly but mistakenly called ant eggs. In the cocoon, the larva develops into an ant, but without the aid of the workers, it seldom can break its way out. The workers break the covering so that the young ant can slip out, and they free it from the pupa cocoon. Thus, the ant is born 3 separate times, and every time a midwife is at hand to help. Without this care, every young ant would perish. The young ants must be cared for until the chitin armor has hardened. The time of development varies greatly. The growth in the egg may take from 1 to 5 weeks. The age of the larva is frequently much longer. If the larva passes into the pupa stage in late summer, the period of the larva is 4 to 10 weeks. But if in winter, it may take several months. It is the same with the time for the pupa stage. It may last 3 or 4 weeks, but very much longer when the pupa has to go through the winter. The tender young ants are not considered grown until the armor has hardened, which may require several weeks. The length of life of ants corresponds more or less to this long period of infancy. The male, it is true, lives only a short time. Almost always, he dies as soon as he has done his duty, that is, after the wedding, which takes place usually in the spring following his birth. If some of the males stay in the nest, they are treated cruelly and fed very little. Sometimes they are driven out or killed. The workers live much longer. I kept some for more than 3 years in an artificial nest, and some investigators believe that they live for 7 years. Queens may live much longer. It has been proved that they may live for 16 years, an astonishing length of life in the insect world. Marriage is necessary for humans if there are to be children, or at least, what we mean by marriage. The maiden must have her husband. Poor maiden, says the ant, must you have a husband? What if you have none? Then I shall have no children, answers the human maiden. The ant laughs at this. It can imagine nothing so stupid as that a husband is necessary for a maiden to have children. She may have a husband, of course, but why not have children without having a husband? The woman is everything, and every female may have as many children as she desires. That is child's play. She need not even be a complete woman. Even a worker can have children, although she is only half a female. Yes, human maidens may learn something. It is so simple. the leaf louse and the ant know how. As a matter of fact, among the ants, the feminine workers sometimes assume the obligations of the queen. These are distinguished from ordinary workers by a larger lower body. In some species, if the queen dies, sometimes the workers feed one of their sisters with rich and special food so that she can lay eggs. This sister, of course, is a full-grown ant. A worker of this type has taken no part in any wedding and has not been fructified by the male. As a rule, the ants from her eggs are males, but it is an error to hold that this is an absolute rule. In an artificial nest, I have myself observed, although none but workers were there, that eggs were laid from which came males and workers, but no true females. The idea that the sex or number of the larvae may be regulated by the kind of food, as is the case with the bees, has not been proved. On the contrary, it is most probable that the sex is determined in the germ itself. I cannot allow to go uncontradicted the idea that in some species the type of queen has disappeared and in her place, a permanent type of female worker has arisen. Such an idea is erroneous. Either these workers assume the functions of the true females in every respect, that is, they set aside permanent maidenhood, have a germ sac, and allow themselves to be fructified by the males, or, untouched by the males, remain workers, laying eggs as maidens, from which males and ordinary workers, as well as feminine workers, may develop. If they assume the functions of true females, there is not the slightest reason for considering them as other than true females, real queens. If they remain workers, laying eggs as maidens, the species must die out in the course of a few generations, since we know not a single instance in all the animal world, beginning with the amoeba, in which unlimited parthenogenesis is possible. The natural pairing of the sexes must recur at some time. The true female must never be lacking. In some generations, there must be a male and a real female who are wedded regularly. Even the true female, the queen, may lay eggs parthenogenetically and does so daily, accomplishing the trick of laying maiden eggs. Although she is no longer a maiden, she has been fructified for all her lifetime, carrying the male germs in her sac, and may use these or not as she lays her eggs. If she lays an unfertilized egg, it is a male, and these males are maiden-born, although born of one, not a maiden.